Ms. Sukhi, and our other esteemed panelists. That was very insightful. We now move on to our last panel of the day. India's labor force has a gender gap, with the number of women participating dropping over 7% over the last decade. According to studies, empowering women to participate in India's economy could add up to $2.9 trillion to it by 2025. In the recent years, visible steps have been taken to encourage women entrepreneurs, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. We now have a last panel of the day moderated by Ms. Satakshi to discuss Indian women breaking barriers in business. Ms. Satakshi from Boston Consulting Group is also the co-founder of Global Governance Initiative that aims to create an equitable and inclusive ecosystem for global youth in the space of policy, development, investment, and management sectors. She has also been felicitated with the Most Promising Women Leader 2021 award by a leading national daily and LinkedIn Top Voice 2021 Next Gen. We're glad to have her as a member of our advisory board at Women in Tech. Let's join them as they discuss the struggles of Indian women in the business landscape and what steps can be taken by corporates and government to make this seemingly alien intersection of technology and business more inclusive and bringing about a systemic change in our society. It's no news that women experience added societal pressure at workplaces and have to work extra hard to prove themselves. Through this discussion, our panel will identify the challenges faced by female entrepreneurs. They will also discuss how women can navigate their way through it and become louder in their actions, while also highlighting how other segments and institutions can be better allies. On the panel, we have Ms. Shuchita Gupta, co-founder, Care for Parents, a health tech startup. Her career is a unique blend of financial and information technology experience. Having worked in diverse leadership roles across industry, her area of expertise include advisory, transformation, and public engagement. She has worked as an interim CFO with various tech startups, including E-Enable Technologies, India Gift, Zoopy, and more. She has hand-holded enthusiastic startups right from the inception, understanding to setting up the processes and systems and assisting them in the journey of growth and stability. She has also been a core team member at Women in Tech India. Next, we have Ms. Radhika Ghai, India's first woman to enter the Unicorn Club as the co-founder of ShopClues.com, one of the biggest and first e-commerce destinations in India. Having had an illustrious career in US and India, she brings a very interesting view to the table. Next, we have Ms. Karine Demeyer, is the CCO at Women in Tech Global Movement. Educated in women's studies, social sciences, social entrepreneurship, and technology, she has a very deep understanding of the current narrative and how it can be changed. She believes and works towards creating global, uncommon collaborations and sustainable partnerships and bringing more women into the equation and to decision-making tables. Next, we have Ms. Suparna Malik, founder of Bookworto. With nearly 2 decades of first-hand experience in bringing people together, breaking down barriers, and delivering solutions via project management, consulting to leading global companies backing her, Suparna decided to synthesize her background in technology with passion for books, sustainable living. And being a zero-waste evangelist, blended it all into this platform called Verto. She believes that kindness and compassion infused into daily operations will change the way businesses impact the world. These women have had very inspiring professional journeys, and we're all very excited for this discussion. Shitashi ma'am, the stage is now yours.
And I am personally really excited to introduce the topic for this panel, which is Indian women breaking barriers in business. This is a topic, frankly, really close to my heart, and I'm so honored and so excited to get into heated debates, get diverse perspectives, and really question the fundamental biases, fundamental understandings that we have about women and businesses, and how does the intersection really operate. To start with the first question, and there are going to be 3 themes that we will have. The first one is around bullying. Bullying is at the unfortunate heart and soul of how women are treated in business, and that has a very strong implication how they form their confidence, how they form their personalities when they enter into businesses. I would really love to get your viewpoint on two things on bullying. What do you think bullying really is? And second, were you ever bullied? And how did you really navigate that journey? Given that we are finally have Kareen with us as well, Kareen would really love to start with you, and then we can move on to Radhika, Suparna, and Shujata. Kareen, could you hear my question?
I thought it was a very interesting question that you raised, because I think it's something that is culturally very much defined. I mean, of course, I have a lot of admiration for India in general, and for the women that I've met, you know, during my life that I went to school with. One of my best friends from college is from Mumbai and grew up in Mumbai and lives in Europe. And it's something that when we all went to college, we used to talk about it, and it's something that she felt in her childhood that she had to deal with a lot. And I grew up in the Netherlands, and I was very fortunate that I was not so much a victim of that. And so I really think that bullying is something that's very much, you know, part of the culture. I think, unfortunately, technology has made it easy for people, you know, to actually engage in online bullying, which I really think has a very big impact on people. I think it can really last with you for years. And I really think that there should be much more protection in that sense and many more rules and regulations concerning bullying.
Thank you so much, Kareen, for sharing your passion about India and sharing your rich perspectives about bullying. Radhika, over to you. Would love to hear your viewpoints. You have had a really interesting journey. What do you think bully really is? Because many times women don't even realize, hey, was I just bullied? So, yeah, over to you.
I'll bring two perspectives into this, and one is for myself as a mom and a woman in business, and the second one is just as a mother as well. I have two boys. I have a 17-year-old and I have an 11-year-old, and I am constantly teaching them how to deal with bullying. And as a result, I go back and look at my own day-to-day life to figure out, you know, was that an instance of bullying or not? I would say bullying in the traditional sense of the word, where you are forced or coerced into doing something that you don't want to do, goes away after a certain point. When you reach, all our careers are like pyramids, right? We're at the bottom, we're working hard, we're men, women, everybody's at it together. Of course, the difference continues to exist, whether it's in terms of the pay scale, whether it's in terms of the responsibilities given. Lower the pay scale, more responsibilities given, and the chance of failure increases. That's not overt bullying, but there is a very subvert element of bullying over there, where you constantly feel that what happened here, nobody was mean to me, nobody was nasty to me, but sorry, I just got paid 80 rupees for the 100 rupees that the guy got paid, and they want me to do this extra work because they're trying to prove that I want to go back home to my baby at 5:30. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you live. And Kareen, and I know you talked about the fact that in Netherlands you've been extremely lucky, but I spent nearly about 15 years of my initial career in the US, and I can promise you, it does not matter whether you live in India or you live in the US, that part exists. I remember in my first job, my second job actually, after my son was born, my older one was born, I would get to work at 6:30 in the morning because I really had to leave at 5:30. I had to pick up the baby from the daycare. And I also knew that there were a lot of people just waiting to see, she's left at 5:30 now, she's not going to get the work done. So come home, get the baby settled, all of that, and get back to work. And I feel that that's a very constant story amongst all of us. We've all done that in some way or the other. Put in that extra mile for that less dollar that comes into our pay. So that is a form of bullying that I'm completely against. And I feel that it's high time we stand up and say enough, and it's done. Kareen also brought forward a very interesting point of trolling. And I feel over the last 5 to 6 years, trolling for the gender you are, for an opinion you hold, for a statement you're making, has become a rite of passage, which is so unfortunate. So unfortunate. I used to run a fairly large e-commerce company, one of the largest in India. And I can tell you, I have been trolled for the silliest of things, where the box that came in was broken. Please also remember that I have a male co-founder. But when you go to places like Twitter, when you see the emails that come in from the customers, they all have to do with the same thing. My gender is pointed out first. I got a broken carton of clothes or home and kitchenware because the company is run by a woman. I am sorry, what is the connection? So it is par for the course that your gender is pointed out at points that are just obvious all over the place. But that's a fact, right? The large ship, Ever Given, got stuck in the Suez Canal, and I think I read a lot of coverage of the fact that the captain was a woman. I'm sorry, her gender didn't matter there. So these are just facts that are there. Time for us to put our foot down and say enough is enough. But just a few of us can't do it. The narrative has to change from the men as well, where gender is not something that's picked on constantly.
Wow, absolutely brilliant perspectives, Kareen and Radhika. And I really like the perspective where you're saying, hey, probably my boss is nice to me on my face. But if I'm getting a less paycheck than my male peers, if I'm not given equal importance to the work that I'm doing, if I'm not given challenging work, and this really, I recall, and of course, I have to jump or cross that bridge myself of motherhood once. But I remember there was this female peer of mine, and she was a mother of a 3-year-old. She was never given challenging work, and it really hit me. And sadly, she didn't even realize that that was a form of bullying. People just accept it as a fact. She was always grateful for the fact that I have a job. And it's like, no, that's not enough.
Yeah.
You need to fight for the fact that I am as equal as you are. If I could get challenging work, why not you? So really inspiring story, Radhika. Suparna, would really love to hear your enriching, unique perspectives on bullying.
Thank you. I think what Radhika just said, we've all been there, done that. I think Shukshita would also back that, and so would all of you. So I think as we all have braced, fought, and continue to fight for a seat at the table, at the same time to be seen as an equal to our male counterparts. I mean, we can't be oblivious of the fact that the fight often comes with challenges of its own. And as for perpetrators of bullying, what I have experienced as a woman leader in technology is that although bullying happens across genders, men are typically bullied by their superiors, whereas women are bullied by superiors and peers in approximate, equal proportions. What is more, we are also bullied by subordinates. So, on a more personal note,
Yes.
Bullying for me has manifested itself in the form of, work-related acts like A, withholding information, B, ignoring views and opinions, which further manifests into tactics of micropolitics. And of course, what Radhika has said just applies to most of us. So to be honest, initially one feels ridiculed, and like your question says, that I succumb to it by walking away from the situation, or being in complete denial of it. And eventually, obviously, when it got repetitive and ignorance was no longer bliss, one decides to doing something about it. So for me, it was primarily setting limits on what I will tolerate, and be communicating very, very clearly. So, telling the bully exactly how this behavior was impacting my work. For instance, this confrontational approach works in meetings too. Like if the bully is talking over me with complaints and criticisms, I ask them a direct question about what they recommend instead. And if that doesn't work, ask them to leave the meeting until you finish your discussion. So if they still refuse, end the meeting and reschedule it without the bully. So I feel little is, like all of us are discussing, little is still known about the perceptions of bullying, among even HR professionals, and their strategies to deal with the problem. So I think given the serious negative consequences associated with bullying, um, an important avenue for further research would be to analyze, the prevention and intervention strategies chosen by companies, and the strategies success rate. So that's my perspective on it.
This is really tactical yet actionable perspective, and I really really love that, because anyone, a young girl who is probably going to join her first job and was just sitting in that meeting room now has an inspiration from you, Saparna, to probably either move out of the meeting room or probably give a piece of her mind. And of course, all of this has to be done in a respectful manner. We are not expecting anyone to be a rebellion, but have a voice of your own really really matters. Shuchita, over to you. Of course, you are kind of taking the last seat, so really look forward to your answer as well.
Actually, I have very little to add after the perspective given by my three co-panelists, able co-panelists. But all I have to say is, one, there is a perception bully, if I may call it that way. So it's a given that a woman will look after the house. So you're supposed to work hard on that front if you've started to do something professionally. And then you have to equally work hard and prove yourself at the professional space, whether you're in a job or you're doing your own business. And many a times there are situations where you have to choose one over the other. I would say communication becomes the key there, and you really have to communicate why you've chosen one over the other, because we can't assume the other person will understand our perspective and why we've done that. And just to bring in my personal experience, so when I was partner at my CA firm, for CAs or men or boys in general to have a woman boss, they just couldn't tolerate or accept, and how can I take instructions from a woman? And many a times you would go to client meetings and the client would address the manager sitting next to me rather than addressing me, as if I was the face, and the work would still be done by that manager because he's a male. So I really had to prove myself again and again by putting in all the hard work and show my sincerity at work, and show them that I'm the one, who's making sure that the work doesn't get suffered. And even at working at CXO levels in different startups, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, one or two of the staff would think that they'd rather discuss it with a male counterpart rather than discussing with me. I don't know why that happens. They think we understand less or we can't multitask, whereas just the opposite. I think women can multitask much better.
I completely concur to that last sentence. Really powerful. And in some shape or manner, the biology also really supports us when we multitask, because it's in our genes, it's in our evolution to handle motherhood and, of course, the household. And, of course, when we bring that value to business, it is just so powerful because we bring that with empathy and compassion. Not just with stakeholder management, etc. Really beautiful perspective, Shashita. And I was seeing Radhika raising her hand when she said addressing the male co-founders or the male counterpart. Radhika, you have a viewpoint? Sorry, you're on mute.
I completely agree with that, Ruchita. It's not once, it's not twice, it's 10 times that we hear this all the time, where people would rather talk to the man. So my co-founder and I, we went in, and and it's a very interesting anecdote. We pitched to one of the largest funds in the world, literally, and it's run by a solo person, solo decision maker, a maverick, has made some amazing investments, is a man of science, and not from India, and could not look at me and talk, just could not. So I run the business aspect of it. I have the business numbers. My co-founder is more responsible for the product technology aspect of it. He'd ask, how much GMV, what are your unit economics? And I'd answer, and he'd keep looking at my co-founder. And it happened once, it happened twice. So the third time I'm like, okay, push back and that's it. Figure out, have a conversation without me, because obviously you're looking through me right now. And I remember, we got out of there. Of course, the conversation did not go well because he was not receptive at all. And we got out, and I remember having a conversation with my co-founder and thinking about the fact that, it's good that he didn't come on board, because how does one work with a perspective like that, where you cannot bear to listen to the to a different point of view? And I think it is what it is. Sometimes there are some battles you fight and say, enough, I'm not going to tolerate this. Some battles you walk away from. Nothing that you tolerate. But every battle cannot be fought. Every battle cannot be that, how dare you not listen to me? Sometimes it's not worth it.
I really love that perspective.
I also think that perspective comes with years, because when I was younger, I remember thinking that, how dare he not listen to me? I have an important voice on the table. I'm going to say it. I'm going to speak my truth. And I feel now I realize that I'm there, and I know I have things of value, and I'll fight this battle, and this battle I'm just going to let it go.
Absolutely. I think we all need to decide which are the battles worth fighting for. And I'm so sure there are going to be so many interesting folks who are going to be watching this and taking inspiration. Hey, there are these really powerful, heroic tales. They not only survived it, but they took inspiration from it. If they could do it, so can I. And even if we could really inspire 5% of those audience, and I guess it would be a day well spent, at least for me, and I'm sure for you folks as well. I'll move to the next question, which is kind of a rapid fire, but would really love to hear the rationale about it as well. What is just that one thing that led you to break barrier in business? It can be a thing, it can be a person, it can be an organization or an institute. Just one. I am actually hypothesizing there will be commonality in the room, but even if it is there, let's bring that out. Because if there is a commonality, other young women who are trying to break barriers, they will run after that commonality. And if the answer is unique, let's hear that out as well. Shuchita, let's start with you this time. Suparna and Radhika in that order. And if Kareen, of course, joins, would love to hear from her. Shuchita?
I would say that number one person is just me, and me. So everything stems from self-leadership, which is you have to know who you are, what you can do, and where you're going. And self-leadership, if somebody's read any book or literature about it, is about three things actually. So self-awareness, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. So self-awareness is understanding your values, understanding your beliefs. And then self-confidence is to understanding your capabilities and strengths. Take feedback, adapt, take action, move forward. And then self-efficacy is the belief that whatever comes my way, I can handle it. Like I said, women are multitaskers. And not only that, we bring a sense of creativity. We are very good listeners. We bring a personal touch to so many things. So we don't have to be afraid. I would say experiment, fall, get up, succeed, and repeat. That's my formula. Just believe in yourself. Don't look for endorsements outside all the time.
Such a power-packed answer, Shuchita. Really excited to hear what the next answer would be. So, Parna, what's your answer?
So, I think more or less on the same lines for me, it has been, excelling at soft skills needed for leadership. I think almost 2 decades in the tech world, and I can say that with utmost conviction that while technical skills and knowledge are fundamental, to success, but I still cite, soft skills as the most, desirable attribute when it comes to women leadership. And all those skills like, effective communication and empathy and self-awareness, they are difficult to measure, but they're highly valued and can make a real difference to the bottom line. So as for me, there is a clear connection between strength of character and business performance. And one has seen leaders who rank highly for attributes like, compassion and integrity, they also enjoy a higher return, on assets over a period of time. So soft skills and, emotional intelligence, they move, I think they may prove a key competitive advantage, especially for women in business. And one cannot deny the fact that, thanks to women being women, and like you said, Purva, Shatakshi, like you said, our biology, they outperform men in most of the key emotional intelligence competencies, and be it emotional, self-awareness, empathy, conflict management, adaptability, teamwork. So I think all essential skills for effective leadership in the workplace. And not just that, it has helped me to build relationships and, relate to people and encourage them to succeed.
Thank you so much, Aparna, for that valuable viewpoint. It made me think, or reminded me of the 10 list of commandments for a really good leader. It came from Google. And a lot of these aspects are part of that list. Thought of bringing that out because we are all part of Women in Tech. If I were to actually push you and get more information out of you and get more practicality to it, how does one really enhances their emotional intelligence? I'm really thinking from the perspective of a young audience. They may know that I need to increase my self-awareness, have high EQ. How does one really nurture those characteristics in their personality and add those soft skills in their skills basket?
I think definitely it comes with time and experience, but as women, I think we inherently, we have that quality in us. Most of us, I mean, I've seen, at starter level or, leaders or middle level management. So most of it, have a bit of it. And once you see that it benefiting you in your day-to-day work, you start using it more and more and nurturing it more and more. So I think, like Shuchita said, having a good listening ear, I mean, that's, I think one thing we are better at it, for sure. So I think people do connect on that level with you, and, they listen to you and they understand what you tell them, and that has definitely a greater impact.
Correct. Absolutely, Shuchita.
I would say empathy and being non-judgmental. Oftentimes, our perceptions go ahead of our thinking or our listening to the other person and understanding their perspective. Yeah. So we sometimes have to just leave that aside and listen with no pre-assumptions, and then obviously try and put ourselves in the shoes of the others.
Really beautiful perspective. So there are two powerful ladies who are talking about skill sets, self-awareness, empathy and compassion. And of course, there is a very strong narrative and research also back it that there are inherent advantages that we as women have it. The world is just waiting for us to tap onto that entire potential. Radhika, over to you. Would be really keen to hear your perspective on this question.
I have a much simpler output to both of these, and I think this is something that has worked for me in the last couple of decades of my career, and that has really been to just show up. I show up to work every day with my heart and with my brain. And I think that for me defines everything. And, if some of you are familiar with my career and my personal life, unfortunately, both of them have played out in the public domain. But I have to say there have been days when I have not wanted to get out of bed, literally, and whether that's for business reasons or whether that's for personal reasons. And in my case, it was more public, but I know that it is true for nearly all of us. There are days that are very, very tough. And then there are days that are virtually where, virtually you're on top of the clouds, where everything works out. You've been declared a unicorn and you're doing really well. You're getting awards from the president, the prime minister. All of that is extremely exhilarating as well. And I think through all of this, the most important thing for me is to just show up. And to show up with both my heart and my brain. And maybe I'm oversimplifying everything that Suparna and Suchita talked about, the compassion part of it, the empathy part of it, the part of it that where you continue to be persistent, where you continue to be perseverant, right? I mentor a lot of younger girls, younger women in business, and also men in business. I don't like the tag of, at the risk of kind of playing it to the wrong audience here, I don't like the tag of a female founder here. I'm a founder. I belong on the table of founders, and that's very important for me. So most of the mentoring that I do and is across the board. It's across gender. I do have a soft spot for women because I can relate more easily to the problems that they have. But then I can relate more easily to the problems of a lot of consumer internet founders, right? So the point here, most important for me, is really, and again to repeat it, is to just show up. It is, you cannot run away from your problems, and you cannot run away from the good things that are happening or hide from that. You have to be involved on a day-to-day basis, and you have to show up. And when things go wrong is the most important time where you are present and you have to be part of the solution. And it's much simply put, and then everything I think Shuchita and Suparna talked about, but in many ways it comprises the same values, compassion, empathy, self-awareness, and persistence, very important. And I think women have that in droves. I've had so many amazing women work with me where I know that if I give them a task, they get it done. And I can say that about some men, but not all. So it's definitely a different story. You see that with women politicians in our lives as well. They get trolled, they get slammed, they show up every day, they're there. So definitely a strength we all have. Let's play to that.
Definitely, lots to learn from you, Radhika. I've often asked her this question: how do you do it?
No, but the fact is, it's really as simple as that, Shuchita. I just know that I have to go to work. I have to do it. I have to. I attend all my children's parent-teacher conferences, everything, and I just do it. There are times when I really don't feel like I can do it. I don't have the emotional strength to do it, but I do it. It's just, and by the end of the day, I feel much better. And that was a phase, of course, and now I feel like I'm on an upswing again. So again, I have to remember that things go up and down, and when they do down, you show up. That's about it. So.
Such a powerful answer on resilience, Radhika. Really excited so we kind of heard two answers. Kareen is back with us. If at all, Kareen, you could hear us, we would love to get your rich perspective before we synthesize. The question is, what is that one person, thing, institution, whatever it is, that worked out for you to break barriers in business?
Well, that's actually interesting because I actually have two experiences. I went to a women's college in the United States, and that college really, at age 18 when I came there, as a professional from the Netherlands, being 4 years around more than 1,000 very intelligent women made me realize when I graduated in 1987 that I could.
Really sorry, Kareen. I would have to unfortunately move on. But would really love to connect with you separately to get your rich perspectives around this. Moving on, just really synthesizing the answer here. The answer that we heard from the three panelists and unfortunately couldn't hear from Kareen are two. One is around skills and characteristics and values of compassion, empathy, self-awareness, basically the EQ rather than just the IQ. And then on the other end, there is Radhika who is saying, hey, point number one is really important. Point number two is equally important, which is just show up, which takes resilience, courage, and a lot of self-confidence as well. And I want to actually very proactively call this out. After hearing all of us, I just don't want to sound like a male bashing agenda that we are just saying, hey, women are on the top, male are not important. And this is really important, right? We are aiming for a gender neutral society, not just a female first society. And for us to get a gender neutral society, we really need to have Leaders like you talk about your journey so that other women can take inspiration and really learn from the mistakes as well as success levers to carve out their own journeys. Moving to the last question and the last theme about policymakers and governmental organizations. There are certain changes that we can drive through the society by inspiring them, by guiding them. But there are certain changes that have to be systemic. They cannot just come bottom up. They have to come from the government to us. What do you think are two policy changes or systemic changes by the government that can really facilitate or create a congenial ecosystem for women to break barriers in business? Let's start with you, Suparna, Radhika, and Shuchita in that order of screen.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think as simple as something like education and training and awareness, and starting very early at that. I mean, working to improve gender dynamics in business will involve targeting, the disparity over a woman's educational years, and I think beginning with probably primary education and continuing to college. I mean, to support a future where more young women pursue an interest in business careers. The task will be to change attitudes and build awareness about business opportunities, and increase leadership opportunities, and build confidence in girls, young girls from an early age, which I'm afraid is it's not happening as of now. So again, the professional education and training should start from school level. Women must be educated and trained to acquire the skills and knowledge in various functional areas of business. And in my view, women entrepreneurship should be promoted through education by, say, introducing entrepreneurship as a subject after 8th grade probably. And I mean, most of the young girls I see today, I mean, I am a mother of a teenage girl, and if I talk to her or her friends, I don't see any of them saying that we want to, pursue this kind of avenue. So I think that's an area we need to work on. And in addition, obviously, vocational training, should be provided by government and private institutions, specifically for women as an option to college education, especially in non-traditional areas. So I think young girls through their education years have to be informed and made aware that, for a growing number of women, the fastest route to the, leadership roles is launching, their own businesses, and that it is doable. So that's my take on it.
Sure. It's a really pragmatic answer. So there are two themes that I'm hearing from you, Suparna. One is around awareness and campaign building. Second is around skills, especially entrepreneurship. The answer is really relevant primarily because, of course, like Radhika said, even our society is divided as a pyramid. What about those women who are at the middle and the bottom? One of the really strongest ways to empower them economically is to build an ecosystem of entrepreneurship for them. And it can be anything, right from opening their own stores to opening their own salons. And they can be part of that entire mass entrepreneurship campaign and that revolution. Really relevant feedback. Radhika, over to you. What's your take on this question?
This is an extremely interesting question for various reasons. When I graduated from college, women participation in the labor force in India was about 30%. Today, it's less than 20%. क्या हो गया पिछले 20 years में? What happened, right? What changed in the last 20 years? I remember graduating, and about I would say, easily 50% of the class was women. About again 50% of the top 10 kids were women, and went to relevant colleges. Yet very few of us went into STEM. We just did. I'll give you my own story where I went to an engineering college for 6 days and did not want to do it, was just intimidated because I had got civil engineering at a great school, but it was me and 120 other men, and it was overwhelming. And I'm I rarely get overwhelmed, but it was overwhelming. It was just a very different story. So I think the most, and it's sad that we're talking about the same problem 20 years later also. The only reservation that matters in engineering colleges is reservation for women. And please understand, this is coming from a mom of two boys who are in their 90th, 95th percentile, my 12th grader. That means that he will be pushed down the ladder to if we give preference to women. But that is important. Funnel ही नहीं खुला है. We haven't been able to open the funnel. We haven't pushed more women down the funnel. We've done a great job up to 12th grade. And at this point, I'm not even talking about the very straight out society. I'm talking about the great Indian middle class. And we haven't heard that word in such a long time. It's become the Aam Aadmi and everything else. But really, truly, the great Indian middle class, where the women are not opting to get into STEM for various reasons. Make it easier, give a reservation, make the hostels easier, talk about safety. So there is an education implication of it, where the only reservation in my mind truly matters is that for women, and that should be kept in STEM colleges. The second aspect that is very, very, very important when we talk about the fact that we are not seeing enough women in the labor force is that change that definition also, because women are in the labor force. We do a lot more work than is defined as work, and that is demoralizing and demotivating for a lot of women as well. So, I know the government is doing a great job with the entire entrepreneurship sector. There is a lot of conversation about startups, a lot of conversation about technology being brought into day-to-day lives. Push it a little bit more for women. It is game-changing. It's truly game-changing. 14%, I don't know, Economist insists that it's 7% of Indian women participate in our economic labor force. The government's number is 14%. Let's go with 14%. Just imagine if that number even went up to 40 or 50%. Just imagine the economic growth, the GDP growth that we will see. So both of these, whether it is at the top of the funnel where the kids are coming into the workforce, especially in STEM, is women reservation very important, something that should be a point of conversation. We are further back from where we were 20, 25 years ago. And the second one is when they come out and the opportunities they have, the government should work a lot on entrepreneurship, on just technology subsidies, technology support to women who are trying to do that.
That's an absolutely deplorable data point to hear, and you have witnessed it during your lifetime, Radhika.
It's heartbreaking.
And
it is
absolutely heartbreaking, because I am now getting the chills. What will happen after 20 years? Would I be in a similar session with the same ratio? Oh my God, that's just really, really heartbreaking, like you said. And I really like the answer. It's a very strongly opinionated answer, but you are really right in the sense, if the number is less than a quarter, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are, by the way, doing better than us on those numbers. What would be our GDP parameters? What would our economy look like if we have, even if not equal, like you're saying, but approximate equal participation? What would the world look like? It will be much more healthier. It would be much more sustainable. I'm a huge belief of the fact that women are just not folks who will just run after economy parameters, but sustainable economy parameters. So probably incidences like COVID will be better taken care of, as we can clearly see from the example of New Zealand.
And sorry, I'll just add one more point to it. I feel the narrative has to change from the men in influence. It has to change from, I'll give you a brief example. Shuchita, when Arvind was heading all of the MyGov, every conversation that was there were women on the forefront, right? So men have to change the narrative. And it is rather sad that we are at a point that we are back to saying men have to change the narrative. We've changed the narrative. We are sitting here and talking about what the fact is. You know, it is the men who have to say that this is a shitty situation. Sorry, I don't know if you have to censor that, but you know, change it. So and I think there are people who are doing that, just not enough.
It is a shitty situation.
Over to
Probably
Shilpa,
this
yeah.
should also be censored if it requires, but I would love to have more men in such panels in future so that representation is equal, the agenda is one, and that is where the change will take place. I am really inspired by the way you are raising your boys, Radhika, and that is what it takes at a household level. Moving back to the institutional and at a policy level, Shachita, what are the systemic changes that you would recommend from your point of view?
To add to what Suparna and Radhika have said, we definitely need training from an early point of your life, early point in your education, about what all is required to be an entrepreneur. Then obviously we need more women to take STEM as an option, career option. And I'm sure both of them will agree. The also problem that happens again is if you're a part of the technology team of any startup or a technology company, women for various reasons are not able to work late hours and have to be back home at a certain point in time for safety reasons or to take care of their families, children, husband, in-laws, so on and so forth. And somehow the whole technology work culture is start late, end late. One, it should not be held against a woman. If she's leaving on time, she can still work from home. She can still be equally productive, if not more. But like Radhika said, there are a whole lot of initiatives that the government has started to promote both entrepreneurship and women entrepreneurs in specific. If we look at Startup India or other initiatives like Agni and all, there's a lot of things that are happening. The problem is implementation at the ground level. So you could have a lot of things going for you, but still there are procedural hassles. The whole environment is not so enabling. You know, everybody would like to ride on your back. So if there are soft loans available for women entrepreneurs from banks, I, for one, if I don't know how to approach a bank, or I go and maybe talk to a branch manager, and he's like, "Oh, you have to fill these like 20 different documents, and I don't know how to make them." So I catch hold of a consultant or a chartered accountant or whoever to help me with that. And then the kind of clauses or the kind of fees or that come up in the conversation, you know, sometimes just would put anybody off and say, forget it. I think I'm much better off without this loan from the bank. So that whole societal ecosystem, again, when somebody's starting out, that's when they need the most hand-holding in terms of mentors. I mean, if I'm good in technology, I don't understand finance. I don't understand compliance. If I'm good in finance, I don't understand technology. If I'm good at HR or business side of things, like Radhika said. So, you know, it's like to understand everything, obviously you need mentors and you need help with marketing. You will need help with fundraising. You need help with so many other things. And it's funny because a lot of times people will say, oh, you're too small, come back to us when you've reached a certain stage.
Yes.
And I think it's much more important when you are at that small stage, actually. So, you know, somehow maybe the whole, I don't know, the mindset has to change of how we have to enable entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. Just policy changes may not do it.
It's a really relevant answer, Shachita, because I'm kind of hearing that we need a cheat sheet. Those 20-page documents are not going to help us because, of course, it's my personal viewpoint that technical jargons actually exist to make sure that people who are outside that circle do not enter into that circle. And I really like the opinion or the fact even you're sharing about that 20-pager clauses that many women entrepreneurs will never be able to understand. So a simple cheat sheet will just go a really long way to help them get access to those policies and subsidies. We are almost on time of our wrap up. Just to quickly synthesize, we shared our journeys, we shared our really unique stories from bullying to the one thing that really helped you to break barriers, to of course your unique value proposition to the government on changing few aspects of policies. Before we wrap up, would really love to have any last opinions, any last comments as we further facilitate entry of more women, or in fact avoid droppages out of that funnel for women in tech. So Parna, Radhika, Shachita would really love to hear any last comments before we have a wrap up.
So I'll go. I mean, just a small point. What I've experienced is that we as women, I think we also shy away from reaching out for help. To enablers. Most of us. I'm not saying all of us. Whereas men are quite, I would not say shameless, but they're pretty. I mean, even if they reach out for help, it'll be, with a lot of confidence and chutzpah. So I think as women, we have to be open to reach out for help, for mentorship, be okay to go with a friend or a colleague or a boss, for a drink or a coffee and, ask them those things that are, bothering you or, which are stopping you from growing. So I think we also have to come out of our, eggshells and not just, blame everything on not being, we not being given the opportunities. I think we need to reach out more, and I think I'm seeing that happening. That confidence is growing definitely in younger girls these days. So, which I'm really happy about. So, that's what I would want to add to it.
Absolutely, reach out. That's one of the ways to get success. The answer is always no otherwise. Radhika?
Yeah. So my 2 cents is this, that, these conversations are great. We are having a lot of them. We have a lot of panel discussions. Action kahan pe hai? Where is the action? That is very, very, very critical. The fact that so many of these conversations are happening is a great starting point. But we kind of started a couple of decades ago. Let's kind of get to action now. And that is the most, I think that's very, very critical. I joined an incubator on the condition that I will be mentoring only women groups there. And unfortunately, there was no women group. Nobody showed up as being led by a women entrepreneur. Of course, as Shuchita mentioned, that there are always the token women that you can get on the panel to to avail the subsidies and everything else. But there was no group that was actually led by a woman. So, unfortunately, if we are not seeing action on the ground, then there is something that's still wrong, and the government, us, the men around us, we have to fix that.
Completely agree. Action way more important than just advocacy. Advocacy is needed, but we really need to talk about numbers which are definitely deplorable, as highlighted by you. Shuchita, last words. Would love to hear from you.
Well, like we all agree, just having discussions won't help. So we all have to go out there and help whoever we can with no strings attached. So whether it's a woman colleague at work, whether it's another woman entrepreneur that you have in your circle, whether it's a student, girl student that you meet who wishes to be an entrepreneur and say, I would love to do something that you're doing, whether it's your own staff in your own office as a co-founder or founder of your startup. So like Suparna said, some will reach out, some will not. So it is upon us how we enable that environment for other women around us, because somebody somewhere probably did it for us in whatever small way. And I think we owe it to others. Not to say that you don't help the men staff or your men colleagues, but sometimes there's a lack of time when you get busy with your work and everything. But I think consciously, if we take out the time to mentor just one more person, even at a point in time, and after 3 months, 6 months, move on to another person, a lot of us can make a huge impact.
Such a beautiful way to end the launch of Women in Tech. It's so true. There were people who helped us. It's time that we give back. And I'm sure all of you are already giving back in your format and your own personal capacity. Would just really love if people hearing this, if somebody is in that capacity, could also start doing it. That's it from our side as the launch of Women in Tech India chapter. Really thrilled. I think this is one of the best ways to start my Friday. I'm just really looking forward to the entire day now. MC, over back to you. That's it from our side.
Thank you, Ms. Satakshi, and our esteemed panelists. It was so insightful to hear your enriching opinions on bullying and how seemingly anarchic social norms have over time suppressed women. As you all said, women need to be louder in their actions. But more importantly, men need to come forward in support of women. It's important to understand that this is not an issue that affects only women, it affects the world that we live in and the generations that will follow us. The discussions today have been eye opening. From, from understand the gender parity gap and identifying the underlying factors, we have all realized that the journey in front of us is not easy, but also not impossible. With the help from corporates, governments, NGOs, educational institutes, and others like you and me, we can tackle this monster that has been growing for decades. Listening to the stories of our panelists today has fueled me, and I hope you feel the same. I'm sure these topics have inspired and challenged young girls in the audience to dream bigger. As all things come to an end in life, so is the launch event. On behalf of Women in Tech India chapter, I take this opportunity to propose word of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to the launch of Women in Tech India. At the outset, I thank our chief guest, Women in Tech Advisory Committee India, ambassadors, eminent speaker, and all the participants. I would like to give special thanks to Women in Tech Global team for their enthusiastic support. A special mention and thanks to the organizing committee for their unflinching support and coordination. Once again, our heartfelt thanks to all participants for active participation. With these warm words and a kind message, we move to the end of today's launch. Now it's up to all of us to join hands and make a meaningful difference. We urge you all to join us in our journey to change lives across the globe. Thank you. Namaste.